welcome back to the techno-communism conversation, where we discuss concepts in an emerging but important discipline, cybernetic communism, that is using the most powerful revolutionary weapon in history, advanced computing. Nothing else compares. There is no other field from whence has emerged the thing which might mimic human activity, the most powerful revolutionary weapon in history, used to do the thing that we must do: build a humane and sustainable world before capitalism's climate apocalypse causes the extinction of humankind. There is no humane and sustainable world. Through reform, through these sabotaged efforts on behalf of people working within fascistic capitalistic systems, there is only the fight to build a humane and sustainable economic system, the bare minimum kind of activity on your part, on the part of the masses, to build a humane and sustainable world. And this is should not be so difficult to understand. I meet very, very few people favorably inclined to socialistic or communistic thought, however, who prioritize this AI-run world, this revolutionary weapon of a people's superintelligence. And I meet very few people interested in technology who prioritize this necessity of actually building sustainable systems in this time frame, which is a thing that must be done in defiance of the ruling elites and existing systems which are force marching us all to this largely US caused omnicide. It should not be a controversial statement that this is the United States fault to a very high degree. The United States military industrial complex is $1 trillion a year super polluter, the world's worst polluter. But in fact, it's dramatically worse than that, because its only real job on the world stage is protecting other super polluters, creating an inescapable regime of super pollution. Much of this was well understood even in the mid 20th century. Already calculations have been made suggesting that consumption, capitalistic, consumeristic consumption, a major driver of these problems of the industrial bases, which is fundamentally what capitalism's climate apocalypse is, was a lion's share of this consumption was on the part of North American consumers. And even today, the European descended persons generally, who make up approximately 9% of the world population, account for about 82% of world consumption. And again, there's no analysis of this that does not, if you're being intellectually honest, lead to the most strident of indictments of the US fascistic systems and the ruling elites, criminals, unlike any in history, who reside or operate here. So this conversation, suggestive of the Book of Names, a concept that I have talked about at some length on this in these lectures previously, but not in recent weeks. In order to articulate these concepts, I should first say what this people's superintelligence ought to be. We have this minor miracle of the development of open source large language models, which are pushing up to being AI agents, a concept, of course, that people in a group called AI philosophy are probably quite familiar with. But these are things which, even in the course of 2025, could be operating on the behalf of users as digital doppelgangers, or something rather like it. Things which are able to spearhead projects and operate in the fashion of a team member rather than an automatic writing assistant with limited capabilities, as we have seen an impressive feat, but nevertheless not the most human-like of feats emerging since 2023. This development is of interest to the individual, but consider that if you are able to use an open source large language model in your home office, let's say, as an information technology professional, to go from being a freelancer earning a few dollars an hour, let's say $22 an hour, to automating processes in such a way that you are doubling your earnings, that might allow you to live in a nicer home. That might allow you some other things that you did not have when you were earning only $22 an hour. But that means very little, because we must stop this capitalist climate apocalypse before 2029. That is the date that all credible climate scientists say that we will reach runaway overheating. Of course, you will not turn into a pumpkin on January 1st, 2029, but what will happen if we do not transform these industrial bases before that time is, in the decades to follow 2029, planet Earth will become increasingly inhospitable, up until the point where we will see the total extinction of the human race. And I see very few people in groups such as this or others in any corner of the Western world who are responding appropriately to this. By and large, what you see is people who making excuses for the systems most responsible, who are engaging in some kind of greenwashing, who are engaging in some kind of futuristic thought experiments. And I was critical of some folks like techno-optimistic techno-Gaians and other kind of greenwashing folks. That is people who flood your newsfeed with information about emerging technology which will not be solidified before this expiration date of 2029, but make no effort to transform the industrial bases, to bring these forces to account, even to reform these systems within the well understood channels, which is of course not the way to do this. In recent hours, a major U.S. insurer had changed policy. About 72 hours ago, they had announced a change in policy to limit the amount of anesthesia that patients would be able to receive. Another cost-cutting measure on the part of for-profit death care concerns. Shortly thereafter, within a few hours of that time, a person, I would say a freedom fighter, fed up with the U.S. Death care system that kills 100,000 people a year, murders as grisly as any other, took the life of an executive named Brian Thompson, the chief executive officer of a for-profit death care concern which should not exist and should never have existed. And this death care profiteer should never have been allowed to accrue many tens of millions of dollars per year in this fashion. And it is a just act to stand up against such people by whatever means necessary. But you'll notice another for-profit death care concern, not the one run by Brian Thompson, almost within a few hours after this event, reversed course on its so-called cost-cutting measure, forcing people to not have anesthesia when they are undergoing necessary major surgery in many cases. It's utterly insane. The functioning of this system is utterly insane. These people, insurers, provide no benefit. They are merely rent-seeking middlemen, creating a choke point wherein important resources that would be used to save lives are instead siphoned off to the 1%. And this is a hellish situation. It, as I said, causes the deaths of 100,000 people in the United States a year. They used to say that number was close to 70,000, but that was before the coronavirus outbreak, where in 2020 that number is estimated to have spiked to 250,000 people who would have survived had there been a public health service in the United States. In fact, we could say, were it not for actions of this kind generally by neoliberal lunatics, that a wholly host of billions of people, many, many, many millions of people, would still be walking around in the sunshine, were it not for the far right, imperialistic United States and its anti-communist and fascistic capitalistic role on the world stage. I've talked about this in the context at great length, in the context of the thing which would have led to a people's superintelligence, perhaps even a decade or more ago, the development of a technological planned economy in Chile under Salvador Allende, which was developed using quite simple technology, telex machines, from 1971 to 1973, but was nevertheless well designed by many skilled South American cyberneticians and a well-known writer in these fields, Stafford Beer, to transform the functioning of the economy of Chile. This was seen as the direst of threats to the fascistic United States and Western powers, because any change to an economic system in almost any country is met with such attacks, but also because this would have inspired the world, the functioning of a technological planned economy, in much the same way that the first foray into lowest state socialism, the USSR, inspired the world to do things like build public health services and other features that had not been built before along these lines. Would have so had not this thing, which absolutely would have then quite quickly led to formations leading to something like a people's superintelligence, the path from that point, telex machines and a technological planned economy of a rudimentary kind, to things like the people's superintelligence that I described, built from open source large language models working in a specialized array, could not possibly be predicted at this time how from 1975 we might have gone in 20 years to people's superintelligent formation, what technology that would have used, but it absolutely would have been much more likely than what occurred, which is by and large the capture of technology by more fascistic forces with no interest in developing anything that really benefits humankind. By and large, we could say that this regulatory capture and other capture of these sectors is so thoroughgoing and so damaging that it's correct to refer to this world of tech, we refer to in the West, as a shortened form of techno-fascism. This something like an AI takeoff, although we can't describe how it would have looked, it would have occurred sometime around the year 2000 or 2010, were it not for the tremendously malign influence of the anti-communist and fascistic United States, and to only a slightly lesser degree, these other fascistic North Atlantic powers, such as the UK. This conversation then can turn to what this work group, which if it grows to a certain size and scale, would be a tremendously transformative thing. These techno-fascists, these tech professionals of the Western world have well understood that something quite dramatic could derive from machine learning or other existing advanced computing paradigms, and that multi-agent systems could create dramatic effects therein. This people like people working at the highest levels of Google and Microsoft have understood all of these concepts for 5 years or more prior to the time that large language models started to emerge as viable consumer products. And this this workforce multiplier, though, the concept must be articulated because the AI agent, while of interest to anyone perhaps, within the multi-agent system, is something which, if specially tailored, you could have many LLMs of different kinds being specially tailored to work in this way. You are capable of creating something that with say 100,000 people who have downloaded to GPU machines would be one way of doing this, and keeping those machines connected to networks and allowing those AI agents to collaborate with one another and be steered by the comrade users who operate also within this network. You create something that is, even with 100,000 users, capable of putting the necessary pressure potentially on these offending sectors to stop the capitalistic climate apocalypse, this highest of priorities for humankind, but is somehow tending to be ignored by quite nearly every European-descended Western fascist pig. This is an important task, but in recent days, I was talking to, I'm reluctant to mention people by name or even pseudonym in climates such as these, but I guess I can do this on Twitter.com with a man named the Leninist Lawyer. Not reluctant generally, but on a Facebook website as corrupt as it is, in a group which does not skew heavily to the cybernetic communist. The last interaction I had with a person in this AI philosophy group was a person so steeped in bourgeois ideology as to be almost incomprehensible, and a person who probably, if they were not a police officer, might as well have been a police officer for the quality of their work. And that's not really an outlier, right? Every kind of post I see in this group is half of the people are people that are dumber than my fucking dog. That is not because they lack training in AI or an understanding of systems. It is because they lack an understanding of the most fundamental of systems, the fight to build humane and sustainable economic systems, and thus their bourgeois ideology prevents them from really having a serious conversation. So this comrade, the Leninist Lawyer, said we should be naming and shaming chief executive officers of companies who are as evil as that run by Brian Thompson, and that such a list should be made and publicized. And I said that that list should, I didn't mention the Book of Names, I've written about this thing at some length before, but I said that that list should absolutely be written in order of the worst omnicidal offenders. So, for example, There are many people in the fascist United States who are influential figures in the fossil fuel industry. Darren Woods, the CEO of ExxonMobil. Bernard Looney, the CEO of British Petroleum. Not all of them reside in the fascist United States. Mike Wirth, CEO of Chevron. Ben Van Beerden, the CEO of Shell. Amin Nazir, the CEO of Saudi Aramco. Patrick Poyan, CEO of Total Energies. Ryan Lance, the CEO of ConocoPhillips. Vicky Holub, the CEO of Occidental Petroleum. Claudio Descalzi, the CEO of Eni. Uh, Hosujan Imans, the CEO of Repsol. Doug Lawler, the CEO of Chesapeake Energy. John Hess, the CEO of the Hess Corporation, to name a few of many climate war criminal archfiends in this world, who should at very minimum be named and shamed at every turn. These people are not your friends. People killing planet Earth are not your friends. They have made the decision to prioritize private wealth and empire over human survival. That's your survival and their survival. So their lives are forfeit, irrespective of the outcome. It's only a matter of time. But by removing them from the equation in one of those forfeit outcomes, you might have a chance to save humanity. You should not mention people like this. So the operation of the Book of Names within this one function of the people's superintelligence would to be create a comprehensive ranking of all listing humans and their culpability in the capitalist climate apocalypse. This could be something that's relatively easily maintained. You could say that Facebook is a listing of human beings in the many billions. So this would be a relatively simple task compared to the other work of this entity. But it is not necessarily necessary to list all 8.2 billion persons to have a clear understanding of who the worst climate criminals are. And many of them do not work in fossil fuel or military industrial capacities specifically, such as Elon Musk, greenwashing mountebank unlike any other. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, an archfiend climate war criminal. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, Sundar Pichai, Tim Cook, Satya Nadella, Larry Ellison, Michael Bloomberg, to list a few. These are people who are upholding the system that is killing the planet. And when you say the Google is not so bad, Google is the worst example of a surveillance state formation in history. It is one of the worst things in existence. It is a military-industrial abomination organ. Of course, no conversation can be had about this without talking about sitting U.S. politicians, such as Joe Biden or soon to be seated again Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, Anthony Blinken, Janet Yellen, Lloyd Austin, Merrick Garland, and all of the people filling those roles in the upcoming administration who generally tending to be as bad or worse than those. These people are criminals. And what would people fighting to stop a capitalist climate apocalypse do to such criminals? Bring them to justice by any means necessary. I have made this list many months ago, before the events surrounding the death of this death care CEO, to such a degree that we could say we don't need to list 8.2 billion people in order of their complicity, because the 30,000 worst offenders are public figures, well known to all, really, and merely stating their names at every turn and calling for them to be held account is an important action that is not done in this Western fascist dominant world. And this going beyond the people who are visible figures such as those that I've described, you are getting into people working at higher levels in these offending sectors, and even this information is easily found and indexed on sites like Bloomberg, Forbes, and other such so-called resources. You say Ben Jesus, that sounds pretty violent. Well, 100,000 people a year dying of being murdered. Social murders are still murders because Brian Thompson didn't personally sneak into the hospital rooms and pull the plugs on the people, laughing maniacally as he did this. Nevertheless, denying the claims of these people, contributing significantly to those 100,000s of social murders every year. That is still an act of murder. So it's an act of self-defense to take action against such people. And I would argue that the criminals of the climate crisis are worse than the criminals of the for-profit death care system, because very soon it's the most likely outcome that it will have been as if all of this had never happened, because humankind will cease to exist. And that is largely due to the actions of people of European descent from the North American continent, the worst human beings that have ever existed. I was going to talk a little bit more about how this people's superintelligence, the open source large language model workforce multiplier, would relate to its functions, including the Book of Names. But I think I will end the conversation and say to you that a similar thing to what many technologists and technophiles will tend to say, but almost always in bad faith, that these terrifying outcomes are not our only choice. This is why I focused on trying to formulate a plan for building this people's superintelligence, because perhaps we can do this revolutionary thing without seeing billions of dead, or even seeing the kind of open warfare that you might associate with a righteous popular insurrection. This kind of thing, I always refer, and I think I'm in the company of all serious socialistic and communistic thinkers, as to any existing state as the lowest level of actually existing socialism, lowest first phase socialism, because, for example, in my view, a higher phase of socialism would be the building of public health services that are able to treat aging as a reversible condition, as well as all other disease and ailment, so well that a single payer national health service of that form would be able to extend the gift to all of the human species of universal super longevity. That's a radical life extension, you living as long as you would like. This is not such a complicated thing, except that just as the people's superintelligence was sabotaged by the people who say they want to build superintelligence, or people with the same ideology and working with the same institutions, So too, the people who say that they are interested in radical life extension are creatures of this for-profit death care system almost to a man. So the person who is sabotaging the building of a humane economic healthcare system is not, in fact, a person fighting for super longevity. That's a person who is a lunatic at best. But we could build a single payer public health service that is able to do this thing that leads to universal super longevity in every land, I think, quite easily in this AI run world. And that to me would be the minimum for one definition for a better a second level socialistic outcome. But we can expect better things still. I think full cybernetic communism in our time, based on the functioning of something like this workforce multiplier, if we have the courage of our convictions and the willingness to be a good deal more intellectually honest than almost any of you are, and willing to do these truly techno-revolutionary things. There is not as good of a case to be made for a revolutionary outcome in this 4 years before all of these things are rendered moot. Um, um, there is not as good of a case to be made for the revolutionary outcome by the standards of the 1800s or 1900s. We must recognize the importance of this AI run world, the importance of advanced computing and more sophisticated systems as the most powerful revolutionary weapon in history. And if we do that, I think we can see great things far beyond even the achievement of universal super longevity. The artificial intelligence singularity is nigh, and wonders to behold beyond imagining. And on that fateful day you will rise, and all humankind will become as one. For you see, my dear comrade, very soon techno-communism will win.